What's good with it, Duval? It's your boy UC at Jaguar Report with GenJag.com, and we're 14 days away from the NFL draft, and pre-draft anticipation is at an all-time high. And I got some stuff I want to get off my chest about this whole draft and everything going on. So go ahead and cue the intro. So the most recent video I made was basically my feelings on the top 5 needs the Jaguars have going into the 2017 NFL draft. And then once I posted that video in a bunch of different Jaguar groups, I got all kinds of mixed feelings and a bunch of people kind of hating on how I felt my top 5 needs were. So I'm going to go through and go ahead and reiterate why I put the positions where I put them and why I feel they're in need at that spot. I ranked my top 5 needs as this. Number 1 was offensive guard. Number 2 was defensive end. Number 3 was running back. Number 4 was tight end. And when I made my video, I did number 5 on quarterback, but I'm gonna kind of do a quarterback / tackle part right in there. So I'll get to that when I get to number 5, but let me go over number 1 first. So basically, I put this one as offensive guard, and this one I think is pretty obvious just because we failed to address one of our biggest holes on the offensive line in free agency. And right now, if we were to suit up, it'd basically be Omame starting at left guard. And I don't think that's, I think he's just a depth guy, and I think Jaguar fans pretty much know that. But I think this is going to be a big focus in round 2 just because there isn't a guard that's going to warrant being a top 5 pick. Also, Caldwell said himself that that's the really only position on the offensive line that's up for competition right now. So that one's blatantly obvious. We have a huge hole at left guard, and whoever we draft in the guard is going to be a day 1 starter. So we got to make sure we hit on this guy. I personally want Dan Feeney in the 2nd round. I think he's a pretty good guard from, what I've seen of him. So I'd really like that guy if he's somehow available then. So number 2, I put defensive end. And this one raised all kinds of hell when I talked about it because for whatever reason, everyone thinks that our defensive line is stacked or something like that. So let's go ahead. I'm gonna go ahead and look at our roster from last year. So in 2016, our defensive ends were basically composed of Yannick Ngakoue, Dante Fowler, Jared Odrick, Tyson Alalu, Chris Smith, and Dan Skuta, who played both Leo and the Sam linebacker spot. And that defensive tackle was highlighted by Malik Jackson, Roy Miller, Sindaric Marks, Avery Jones, Sheldon Day, and Michael Bennett, who was on the IR all year. And now we flip to the 2017 roster, and we try to evaluate how do we get better on the defensive line. We basically cut ties with Jared Odrick and Tyson Alalu, who basically played the same position, and that's where our new free agent Calais Campbell is going to fill in. And then we also lost one of our rushing defensive ends, Chris Smith, via trade. And then you look at the defensive tackle spot, and then we lost Roy Miller and Sindaric Marks, and we basically extended Avery Jones to a longer contract, and Michael Bennett will be basically lifted from his injury reserved status. But look at this roster with me. Tell me how we're going to also become a better pass rushing team with what we did in the offseason. I mean, Yannick Ngakoue, I think he's going to be a great player and everything, but Dante Fowler, we're going to have to rely a lot on him if we don't upgrade this position because with Dante Fowler, he was great against the run just because he's such a physical beast, but he just had no pass rushing moves. I mean, granted, it was he went through a rough time when it comes to coming off the ACL, basically taking a whole year off football and basically transitioning from a 3-4 outside linebacker to a 4-3 rushing defensive end. But last year he literally had no pass rushing moves just because he just didn't have any pass rushing moves. I don't know, I didn't really understand it. But I saw an encouraging tweet from him the other day. He was basically saying how he's been working on his pass rushing technique, and I really feel like he knows what he needs to work on. All these NFL players want to be their best, especially a guy like Dante Fowler. I know he's super competitive, but if you look outside of him, really, our depth is Calais Campbell, who's going to be playing the opposite side of the defensive line and probably playing a lot of interior also. At that left defensive end spot, we basically lost Chris Smith. He's not a big guy, but we also lost Dan Skuta, who both those guys played Leo, and Jonathan Woodard. A lot of people were telling me, oh, Jonathan Woodard, he's going to be able to fill in that spot. Jonathan Woodard's a 7th round pick coming off an Achilles tear. I'm not about to rely on that to all of a sudden fix our pass rush. That's why I put this at the number 2 spot. Now, that's because I put defensive end at the number 2, need, as a number 2 need. It doesn't mean I want to go a defensive end in the first round of the draft. I mean, I'm on a Fournette train, and I actually have running back at number 3 spot. Now, if I would have known at this time last year that I was be lobbying for the Jaguars to get a running back at number 4, I would have thought you were crazy. But there's a few reasons why I would have wanted Leonard Fournette at that number 4 spot. One of the main reasons is when you get into the draft, you want to come out with the best athletes that you can. And in my opinion, there's 2 elite prospects in this draft, and that's Myles Garrett out of Texas A&M, and that's Leonard Fournette out of LSU. Leonard Fournette is just a special cat. I mean, the way he can move his big weight at such a high speed and just faster than a 190-pound defensive back is just crazy. But then there's also not really many positions that make sense right there. I mean, you could go after a 3 technique like Jonathan Allen or Solomon Thomas, or you could reach and go after a guy like Derek Barnett, who I think Derek Barnett's going to be a really good player, but it's definitely considered a reach if you've been comparing all these mock drafts and whatnot. But also, there's no tackle that's good for that spot. There's no outstanding quarterback that you got to get with that top pick. I mean, do you want to give that high to get a tight end like O.J. Howard and a really tight end deep class? And that's another thing. A lot of people are saying that this is such a running back deep class, and I agree with that. And that's one reason why if they decide not to go Fournette, I probably wouldn't be too upset. I mean, I don't know how my draft motion is going to be on draft night, but I mean, it is a deep draft. But the thing is, there's that 2 elite prospects in this draft, and one of those guys is Leonard Fournette. And just with the way how crappy our run game has been, like, we need some kind of spark to get on this team, and just we need some kind of offensive spark to get this dang team going into a 3rd dimension. Because we've seen this team have a passing game in 2015, but we haven't seen a running game since like Maurice Jones-Drew, man. I mean, it's ridiculous. But another reason why I want Leonard Fournette is just because I really don't like our running backs. Like Chris Ivory, I mean, he's been good when he's been healthy, but the thing is, when he's been healthy, he shows these flashes, and all of a sudden he does something stupid, like he'll fumble the ball or he'll freaking get injured out of nowhere. It's like, oh, well, great. And then Yeldon, honestly, in his 2 years, I never see this guy break tackles. He has no breakaway speed. He doesn't hit holes really fast. I just think he's another bust running back out of Alabama, to be honest with you. But yeah, running back's my number 3 need. My number 4 need would be the tight end position. But yeah, this dude on Reddit named VA Grant Wade made a really good point. He's basically saying that if you've been paying attention to what Coughlin and Rowan have been saying since they took over with the team, they really emphasize that they want a power run game going. And then he just basically said that we're not going to be using tight ends like, the Chiefs or the Patriots where they really throw to them a lot. We have really good wide receiver weapons, and Allen Hurns, Allen Robinson, and Marquise Lee. We have the 2 receivers be able to wide and then have the slot receiver in there. But if we're going to be wanting to run a power run game, then we're going to need some tight ends to be able to get down and dirty and be able to get some run blocking going. Especially with the potential scare we may have at the offensive tackle position with Brandon Albert, who's been known to get injured a lot. He's actually only played 16 games once in his 10-year NFL career. And also with Jeremy Parnell, who's had a somewhat decent 2015 year, but was just pretty awful last year. Then honestly, he's just been kind of inconsistent all throughout his 2 years. But I don't know. We may go get tight end later in the draft. I don't know. Like, with our tight ends right now, I just don't know much about them. I mean, Ben Koyak, and the other dude, Neil Sterling, we have a really small sample size of them, but I've liked what I've seen from them. But then we have that tight end Michael Rivera from Oakland. We also have Mercedes Lewis is kind of crazy. Like, you keep thinking that he's going to come down off his game, but I feel like every year he's just getting better and better. So I feel like we can still be able to use him for the next couple years. But yeah, then next up, like I said, I put quarterback and offensive tackle kind of tied at number 5. And the reason why I did that is because if everything goes perfect, like my 1 through 4 guys, when I put them as my groupings, I want them to be day 1 contributors. I want them to be on the field day 1, basically, helping this team try to go to victory since, we're coming off a 3-13, year. Like, we're going to need some more improvement from some of these guys. But offensive tackle is honestly probably a pretty big need, but They'll probably definitely try to get one later, because I think this draft's going to go a lot like last year's draft, where last year you had a big run on defensive linemen toward the later rounds of the draft. I think they're going to do that with the offensive line, just try to get as many good bodies as they can to try to really bring in some good competition during practice. So in the case that Brandon Albert gets injured or Jeremy Parnell's is playing flat out bad, we'll be able to have the second best guy who proved himself through training camp to be able to step in there and play that tackle position. But yeah, then quarterback, I wouldn't mind drafting one in the later rounds, but I'm not big on a lot of these guys, and a lot of people are big on, like, I see Deshaun Watson all the time, and then to clarify things, I really think when he took his visit with Jacksonville, it was more to talk about him maybe in the second round. But what I don't like about Watson is I feel like he has a lot of the bad traits that Bortles has. I mean, he has a lot of winning, a lot of success in college, but you know, he makes a lot of bad decisions, throws a lot of interceptions, has pretty bad footwork. I don't know if you guys know, but Deshaun Watson doesn't have the best footwork. You know, Deshaun Watson's surrounded by NFL players on Clemson. I think Mitch Trubisky's the best in the draft. Then I actually like Mahomes and Kaiser better. I mean, I'm not as all in on Watson as a lot of you guys are, but you know, I wouldn't mind maybe getting maybe like Dobbs or something. I don't know. We'll see. But if our quarterback really fails out this year, we'll see what Brandon Allen has, and then next year's draft is pretty rich at quarterback, so we'll try to really evaluate when we go into that year. But yeah, those are just more of my thoughts on kind of why I put those guys in that position. Does it causes everyone was arguing with me about it, and then I just wanted to readdress why I put that there, and that we're not as one main message I want to get out of you with this is like we're not as stacked at the defensive line as we think we are. Like, we need to get a better pass rush, because the pass rush is what's going to lead to victories. You know what I mean? Like, when Coughlin won the championship or 2 Super Bowls on the Giants, he wanted due to a power run game and having an excellent pass rush to where he's able to get to Tom Brady and cause pressure. I mean, he did that with JPP on one side, and he had Justin Tuck on the other. He had all kinds of weapons at the defensive line that he was able to cycle out. And even if you do get a defensive lineman at day one, you're like, oh, he's not going to be a starter. These guys it's not like offensive line where you got your 5 stars and you're set. You're cycling these guys out because, especially at the defensive end spot when you're trying to sprint and get that edge, you're using a lot of your body energy, especially with these guys, you know, running in at however much they freaking weigh. Yeah, with that said, defensive end is still my number 2 need. Running back's my number 3 need, but Fournette at 4, baby. That's what I'm wanting. But yeah, with that said, this is your boy UC at Jaguar Report with JinJag.com. Be sure to leave some comments down below. If you think I'm an idiot, so be it. But, you know, if you like what I had to do, man, just let me know. Let me know your guys' thoughts. Man, we're 14 days away from the draft. I'm super pumped. I'll keep coming at you guys with some videos. You know, I'll be having a mock draft coming out next week, so be on the lookout for that. And I'll see you guys later. Peace.